I think this was even in the beginning of 23, was a rural Indian farmer was able to use a bot built on, I think, a very early GPT-3 or 2.5 even, essentially to reason over some farm subsidies that he had heard about in a local language, and had it even in that very early days, have it even show some agentic behavior, right? Like, go complete a form for me. So in some sense, it took, it brought back agency to someone who perhaps didn't have that because the technology was so much more accessible. Right. So I do think it's in our hands, even in the global south, to use it to create, I would say, more of that opportunity where there isn't one. But I think what the necessary conditions still are, do you have the capital investment being put in? Do you even have an environment for capital? Because in an interesting way, we are, for example, as hyperscalers, investing all over, right, including the global south. So as long as there's an environment which attracts the capital investment.
And you see the demand.
And then, yeah, the demand is there.
Yeah.
And so the question is, how do you have a set of policies that allow for both the capital to come in, for it to find nexus with, there are certain things, by the way, private capital can do, certain things that public capital only can do. For example, the grid, right? It's not, I mean, grid in most countries is sort of fundamentally driven by governments.
By public.
And public. And so if you don't have a sophisticated, or rather, if you don't have a real approach to modernizing the grid, that will hold things back. I mean, there's a lot of talk about behind the meter and so on. And yes, there's some amount of that we can do ourselves.
We can do that in the US. Many countries can't.
Exactly. And it's not long-term scalable, right? I mean, like, to me, a long-term scalable solution is to have, all of these token factories, part of the real economy, connected to the grid, connected to the telco network, delivering. Just like we delivered bits, you have to deliver tokens plus bits. And that's kind of what's going to drive an at-scale, whether it's in the global south or on the developed world.
So many people talk about there may be an AI bubble. I mean, the most important thing that we see as an investor is the democratization of technology, and the diffusion of that technology really does then transform the demand. And the companies or the countries that diffuse it fastest are going to be the ultimate winners, not the technology creator.
For this not to be a bubble,
yep,
by definition, it requires that the benefits of this are much more evenly spread. I mean, I think a telltale sign of if it's a bubble would be if all we're talking about are the tech firms, right? If all we talk about is what's happening to the technology side, then that's it's just purely supply side.
Right.
Ultimately, if we are not talking about, wow, here is a drug, drug that was sort of brought into the market that's super successful because it was AI accelerated the clinical trial. It's not even the magical molecule, right? It's kind of even the rest of what is needed in order to make something much more relevant, right? And so the more we have. And by the way, it's happening, right? So I'm not sort of saying that. That's why I'm much more confident that this is a technology that will, in fact, build on the rails of cloud and mobile, diffuse faster, yep, and bend the productivity curve and bring local surplus and economic growth all around the world, not just economic growth driven by capital expenses, right? Because it's a narrow point in time calculation. It's
right now, that's what we're seeing more.
That's what we're seeing, in the developed world in particular. But remember, my capital, like that, the one thing that is definitely we're spending a lot of it in the United States, but 50% of it is also all over the world.
Right.
And so, interestingly enough, it depends on demand all over the world, and the demand all over the world will only be there if there is local surplus all over the world. And so that's sort of the way I see the equation.
So let's